Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go. Hey, folks, welcome to the show. Episode number 2, Ballsy Uncut. Wherever you're watching and listening, however you're consuming this podcast, I really appreciate it. Tell all your friends. You can check me out. Everything about Ballsy Uncut and our Balls Are Bigger post-game show with me and various CFLers after every Rider game at my website, ballsyuncut.ca. But we're available live on YouTube at Ballsy Uncut, on X at Ballsy Uncut, on Facebook. We'll be on TikTok as well. In fact, what you got to do is you got to go follow me at Ballsy Uncut on TikTok. And when I get 1,000 followers, that's when I guess you can stream live. I have no idea. Is it because the Chinese run it? I have no idea. I don't know. I have the great Gerhardt Studios, Dean, Jessica, Nicole, behind the scenes helping me a little bit with my social media. So I appreciate them. They know all that stuff. I do not. I did some notes like I'm a professional here. I'm back in the saddle. So let's start talking about the Canadian Football League, because we are talking 70% football on this podcast, and usually the 3-down variety, although we will get into NFL stuff. Mark Trestman's going to join us next week, the senior offensive consultant of the San Diego Chargers of Los Angeles. TSN had a great preview show, and they, as part of that, did their top 50. I thought that maybe I could do a top 10 Canadians in the Canadian Football League. I like my Americans, but let's concentrate on the Canadians, okay? At number 10, well, actually at number 11, honorable mention. Now, I did this, by the way, talking with some CFL people, media, and personnel people anonymously around the league. So this is their opinion along with mine. Here's my top, 11 Canadians. This guy is on the outside looking in, even though he scored the winning touchdown in the Grey Cup in Hamilton for Montreal. I got Tyson Philpott at 11. At number 10, I've got Kian Schaefer-Baker. Riders expecting some big things from KSB. He's number 10. At number 9, local kid from the Regina area, went to the U of S, was a Saskatchewan Rough Rider in 2013, traded for Alex Hall, and has had a wonderful career with the Blue Bombers. Patty Neufeld at number 9. Number 8, big offensive lineman for the Ottawa Red Blacks. That'll be an area of, they're hoping, consistency. Everything starts, the heartbeat of a football team is your offensive line. So number 8, I got Drew Desjardins. Number 7, this is where my opinion with some of the people I asked kind of vary. So you could go, this guy's 7, or he could be 6, and the guy I had at 6 on this list could be 7. But at number 7, I've got Nick Dembski. Obviously, a great versatile player. His versatility is one of his keys. He can play running back, slot back, even his return kicks in his time. Really like Nick Dembski, former Rider draft pick. And, of course, a Manitoba Bison. Nick Dembski at 7. At 6, he's emerging. He is going to be one of the targets for Trevor Harris, and he'll be a key to the Riders' offense. I got Sam Emilus going into his 3rd year with the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. Number 19, I got Emilus at 6. But like I said, it wouldn't be egregious to put Emilus at 7 and Dembski at 6. At 5, I've got Ryan Hunter, offensive lineman with the Toronto Argonauts. So he's at 5. Number 4, former UCLA Bruin, former Rider, and Calgary Stampeder now, Cameron Judge, all-star linebacker. I got him as the 4th best Canadian in the CFL heading into the season, as we're in week 1 here. Number 3, Ben Haladik. I got him at 3, linebacker for the British Columbia Lions. Number 2, Marc-Antoine Dequoy, the free safety of the Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes. Of course, had the big pick 6 in the Eastern final against the Toronto Argonauts. The long flowing hair, plays a very physical and active role in the secondary for the Als. And the top Canadian heading into the 2024 season, no big surprise, Brady Oliveira, outstanding plow horse of a running back, but he's got some slick feet too. He brings it all to the table for the Bombers. So Oliveira 1, Dequoy 2, Haladik 3, Judge 4, Ryan Hunter 5, Sam Emilus 6, Nick Dembski 7, Drew Desjardins 8, Patrick Neufeld is at 9, KSB, Kian Schaefer-Baker at 10, and number 11, just on the outside looking in, would be Tyson Philpott. Looking forward to seeing what the Canadians can do in the CFL this year. Other CFL things I wanted to get to. I'll call this Ballsy's Best Bets. Every week, we'll talk about the picks. Sometimes I'll have celebrities in to help me pick the games. But this year I'm going to go, or this week, pardon me, I'm going to go solo. So I've got the Alouettes over the Bombers in week 1, 24-20 in a Grey Cup rematch in Winnipeg to kick off week number 1 in the CFL. I got Calgary defeating the Tiger Cats and Bo Levi Mitchell's return to Cowtown 27-21. Jake Mayer gets the better of his old teammate. The Elks defeat the Riders 28-24. McLeod, Bethel Thompson, and the Edmonton Elks. On the day the Oilers kick off the Stanley Cup, it'll be a winning type of feeling in Edmonton, I feel. The Elks have not been very good anywhere, but especially on home turf. It's their 75th anniversary season. They'll have alumni in the house. And maybe I missed it. I haven't heard if they're having a watch party after the game, but they'd be smart to do so for that Oiler game. But I think it was once called the City of Champions when the Oilers and then Eskimos were spectacular. I think Edmonton gets off to the 28-24 victory over the Rough Riders. And the Lions beat the Argos, the Chad Kelly-less Argos, 29-17 to kick off week 1 and wrap up week 1 in the CFL. Now, here are my season predictions. I've got the Alouettes finishing first, Hamilton 2, Toronto because of the Chad Kelly situation 3, and Ottawa will be better, but I have to put him at 4 just because I don't know how Drew Brown's going to be at quarterback. In the West, BC number 1. I got Winnipeg at number 2. They'll score points. Can their defense keep people out of the end zone? They kind of had a couple of subtractions there. I think it'll be an interesting year in Winnipeg. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish first, but BC at 1, Winnipeg at 2. I got the Riders at 3 if Trevor Harris stays healthy, but it could be a coin flip. Edmonton will be right there, nipping at their heels, and I predict they'll get out to the early lead in the season series. So I got Edmonton and the Riders in a coin flip at Saskatchewan 3 if they stay healthy, especially up front, and Trevor Harris stays healthy. They'll be a 9-9 team. Edmonton at 4, but we could see a crossover to the east, depending on how that Chad Kelly situation shakes down and if they can stem the tide until he gets back. And Calgary brings up the rear in the West. The MOP, my prediction, going to be Vernon Adams Jr. of the BC Lions. The outstanding defensive player, I'm gonna take a flyer here, say Jameer Thurman, coming over from the Tiger Cats, thriving in the middle of that Riders Corey Mace-led defense. So I think Jameer Thurman's the outstanding defensive player. The Canadian, everybody will pick Brady Oliveira. I just said he was number 1 going into the season in terms of top 10 Canadian players, but I'm going to go with Ben Hladek of the BC Lions. He is going to be the outstanding Canadian player. The breakout player of the year, I think it's a tie between the Philpott brothers. Now, Tyson Philpott, of course, scored the touchdown in the Grey Cup to win it for Montreal, and I remember some great things he did when the Riders played the Alouettes this year, especially in Montreal. I think he's going to take another step forward, and I expect his brother Jalen Philpott to have a better season than he's had in Calgary. And I got the Lions over the Argos in the Grey Cup. I think the Argos will get Chad Kelly back, and I think somehow they'll find a way to get to the Grey Cup. Yeah, I say they might miss in a crossover situation, but at the same time, the CFL is wacky. Wouldn't it be something to see Chad Kelly, after everything that went on in the offseason, get his counseling, maybe get his head right, improve that attitude off the field and around the team facility so he could go on the field and perform for the Argonauts. I got the Argos losing to the Lions. Actually, the first ever Grey Cup played in BC at BC Place was Bob Obilovich and the Argos beating Don Matthews and the Leos, but I got it the other way around. So that's my prediction. You can comment. I'll have my comments up here actually as the show goes on. Still working on that portion of things, but you can comment at Ballsy Uncut anywhere on the platforms and let me know what you think of the predictions. What are your predictions for the CFL this year in terms of most outstanding player, outstanding Canadian, outstanding defensive player, and breakout player? And then I've got the top 10 Canadians. What did you think of that list? All right. So, speaking of predictions, the NHL's most likely outcome from the sports books that I've seen is the Panthers winning on home ice the Stanley Cup in 7 games at plus 400. The Oilers winning on home ice in 6 games at plus 450. It should be a long and entertaining series, and I've actually got the Oilers winning in 6. Now, the Conn Smythe, if the Oilers win, the odds-on favorite is Connor McDavid, Leon number 2, and Zach Hyman 3, which is interesting. He's a 100-1 long shot for that. And he's leading the goal scoring by 4 goals. I don't know if that's kind of a weird stat of the day. Now, who is going to be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner if Florida wins it? Barkov 1, Bobrovsky 2, and Tkachuk 3 if it's Florida. I can't argue with any of those. Now, this is an interesting prop bet. The second player to lift the cup after the Oilers win, is it Leon? That's what they think. Followed closely by Nuge. I'd probably give it to Nuge. He's been the longest serving Oiler. He's had 10 head coaches and went through a lot of shitty teams and shitty situations with this team. So I'd give it to him first if I was Connor after he got the cup from Bettman. Although some people are saying a long shot is Adam Henrique. He's a gray beard, and then Connor wouldn't have to choose between Leon and the Nuge. As far as Florida goes, Bobrovsky would get it second, followed by Ekblad. Got to be Sergei, though, wouldn't it be? It'd be icing on the cake for an incredible career. He would join a list of goalies with 2 Vezinas and a cup over the past 40 years. That list includes Dominic Hasek, Patrick Waugh, Martin Brodeur, Ed Belfour, and Tim Thomas. Joe Pavelski on Tuesday. And of course, I didn't mention it when it was out live because this show is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday live. Joe Pavelski, one of the greatest American-born hockey players in NHL history, told reporters he's planning to call it quits. It's not official, and guys could have a change of heart. They could want to come back and win a Stanley Cup since he's been so close. But Pavelski, if he is done, 39-year-old, played 18 seasons in the NHL, born in Wisconsin, was selected by the Sharks in the 7th round of the 2003 NHL draft. What a pick that was. Scored a goal in his first NHL game, and what followed was a storybook career for this American forward. Pavelski played for the Sharks from 06 to 2019 and from the Stars from 2019 to 2024. A 4-time NHL All-Star, 14 seasons in which he registered at least 20 goals. A career high in goals was during the 2013-2014 season when he scored 41. But it was when the playoffs, when the lights were the brightest, is when he shone. Despite not winning the cup in his career, he scored 74 playoff goals, the most for an American-born player. He reached the Stanley Cup final twice in his career, in 2016 with the Sharks and in 2020 with the Dallas Stars. So indeed, if it is the end for him, then a great career for Joe Pavelski. And for the first time since Pete Rose was kicked out in 1989, an MLB player has been banned for life for betting on his team's games. Aided by tips from gambling companies, MLB found that Tucupita Marcano, a 24-year-old utility player for the Padres, placed 25 bets last season while a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, he did it after he was injured, and he didn't play in those games, and he bet on his team to win. But he has been suspended for life. He's a .217 lifetime hitter in 3 Major League seasons. He bet more than $150,000 on baseball from October 16th, 2022 through October 23rd, 2022, and from July 12th, 2023 through November 1st, 2023. In the same announcement, the league announced that 4 players have been suspended for 1 year because they had placed bets on baseball games that were not directly tied to. That group includes 1 current big leaguer, Mike Kelly of the Oakland A's, and 2 former bigger leaguers, Andrew Salfrank of the Diamondbacks, who made 3 appearances in last year's World Series with the D-backs, and Jose Rodriguez, an infielder for the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, sports gambling, the ads dominate every sports broadcast now, and it's easily acceptable for anybody on your on your cell phone. You can make a bet anywhere. You don't have to get the paper ticket anywhere. You can just make it on your cell phone. So it's pretty accessible. And I don't know. I'm going to ask Caleb Joseph, the former Major League catcher with the Orioles, Jays, and Diamondbacks, who's going to be a regular contributor on the show. I'm going to ask him about that coming up here a little later on, what he thinks of betting. I don't have a problem with it if you're betting on your own team. And for the love of God, can we let Pete Rose back in baseball? You let these other guys bet, and they get a 1-year suspension. I think they went over the top with Marcano because he bet for his team and he wasn't playing. Give me a break. Come on, that's hypocritical of this league. But you let the Houston Astros keep the World Series when they clearly cheated? Like, what is going on? Like I said, it was sports. I hate to pick and choose justice, but it's pretty hypocritical of Major League Baseball to take the money, but then talk about the integrity of the game. And it's not just baseball. Of course, you had the NBA player from the Raptors, Jonte Porter, who is banned for betting on games. Shane Pinto of the Sens was banned. Sean Lemon of the Montreal Alouettes is right now appealing his suspension because he was betting while playing for the Calgary Stampeders. Now, the thing that could be the slippery slope, wait until officials are betting on games when that comes out. It is a great money stream for the league, but money is the root of all evil, they say. And these players and coaches, they're just human beings. Now, I know Lemon was betting on his team, I guess, allegedly. He's appealing it. The Alouettes. He did it when he was a member of the Stamps, like I said. But, the CFL might catch a break here because the CFL, along with Genius Sports, the stats have sucked to this point. Nobody is really that invested in betting on the CFL right now. Not as much as they should be because the stats aren't up to date. So maybe the CFL just saved themselves a headache in a roundabout way. We're bitching about Genius Sports, but maybe it's going to turn out for the CFL. All right. I want to bring up who's coming up on the show. On the other side, we're going to hear from former Rider MOP and Grey Cup winning quarterback Kerry Joseph, who is now in charge of directing the fledgling career of the top pick in the NFL draft, Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC, now with the Bears. We'll talk to Kerry from Chicago. We're also going to catch up with the aforementioned Caleb Joseph, who is a former catcher in Major League Baseball and now a Rogers Sportsnet analyst. He'll join us on a regular basis here. It's called Taking Cuts. And Keith Willoughby, the dean at the Edwards School of Business. He's now the dean at Ballsy Uncut. He's in charge of CFL simulations. We'll get his thoughts on the Riders' offseason moves or lack of moves, and also on how he thinks the season's going to shake down and when will we get those simulations. It's all coming up next. This is Ballsy Uncut. Thanks for checking me out. I'll tell you what, folks, I'm absolutely stoked to be talking to this guy. When you grow up in Saskatchewan, you don't see too many Grey Cups. You don't see too many Grey Cups and MOPs. Ron Lancaster was one, and this guy was one. Kerry Joseph, now with the Chicago Bears. Welcome to the show. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Well, you were supposed to join me when you got hired by the Bears, but then I had a change in my life, and I've kind of been behind the scenes putting this show together. So I thank you. I know it's busy and to OTAs and everything like that. So thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I had Wally on, and Wally was talking about Wally Bunny, you know him. And when you can, I always say this, you can tell how big a guy is when you can just use one word like The Rock, or two words like The Rock, KJ, Kerry Joseph, Wally. Wally said, I asked him if he was bitter when the Calgary job came to an end after what he gave to that team and moved on. And he said, not really. I believe when God closes one door, he opens another. Correct. You were in the mix in Seattle. Things were going pretty good. But then, of course, coaching change, and as it goes in football, it can be very nomadic for coaching. How do you deal with that in your faith and going from here to there? When we last talked, you just had a huge flood at your place.
Correct, I did, man. It was crazy, but you know what? You learn to deal with the adversity. You learn to adapt. You know what the situation brings. And for me, it's crazy because I did have that flood in my place like 4 days after we got let go. So my wife and I had already started packing up, putting things into boxes and bins. And
Hmm.
I told my wife, I said, you know, we're not going to be here. And she said, why'd you say that? I said, God has already started us packing as we move to a different unit. So we already halfway packed. And sure enough, a week later, uh, as soon as we moved into that unit, I got the call to come to Chicago. So, it's just having faith to understand that, change is going to happen. And you have to just trust and have faith that it's for the good, and it's for a great purpose.
Yeah.
And I just kind of roll with it that way.
Now, is it a learned thing? Is it a thing where you look back and say, "Okay, I trust because it happened before"? Because I would think you talk about adversity. For you, one of the biggest adversities would be you're a safety in the NFL, and then all of a sudden, I know you were a quarterback in a previous life. Then you're a safety in the NFL. Then you go and become a quarterback in the Canadian Football League. Talk about having to have faith and trust the process.
You do. You know what? I think playing the game of football, being a player and going from, team to team, getting cut, getting released, getting re-signed by someone else, it kind of built up some, how can I say, kind of a stronghold to understand, the profession that we're in, knowing that change will come. You don't see a lot of people that stay in one place for a long period of time. It's very rare. So you just learn how to deal with it, and you say, you know what, it's part of it. And you believe, like Wally said, when one door closes, another door is going to be there to open for you. And you just have to truly believe that it's going to work out for you.
Yeah. So it was help to help you get over your bitterness at what happened in Saskatchewan. You got the rawest of raw deals, and we all know that. And we don't want to pick at an old wound, but you got to go into the Plaza of Honor. Talk about how that helped smooth things over and kind of put a bow on what was a short but outstanding career with the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
You know what? It was an honor to go into the Plaza of Honor. I'm really appreciative of Saskatchewan, the province, the organization for voting me in. I was never bitter toward the organization. I was never bitter toward the province. Uh, I was bitter toward the situation, the circumstance,
Mhm.
and some people that were involved. I did have some bitterness there, but once again, I was off to Toronto. I couldn't, I had to let it go so I can go to Toronto and perform at my very best and to give that team everything that I can give them. You never forget what happens to you, but you do forgive and you move on. And I was able to do that. And the more and the farther I got away from it, I realized that I really had to kind of talk about it to get it out of my system because if not, that's when you continue to hold on and become bitter about some things. But going into the plaza was just a cherry on the top, and I'm so grateful for that to be a part of the legends that came before me, and to just to be always to be a writer in my heart.
Before we get to the Bears talk, because there's some excitement in Chicago, we're talking about a Bears offensive team for a change. Let's go back to Seattle. What'd you learn from the great Pete Carroll and just that coaching staff?
One thing I learned from Pete, Pete always talks about being curious, curiosity, always trying to grow, always trying to evolve yourself. And that's one of the things that I've learned from him. And then also, too, about this game is a lot of pressure,
Mhm.
but don't put any added pressure. Make sure that you're having fun having fun doing what you love to do. Just because the pressure is there in the NFL to win and to win now, don't stop having fun. Don't. It's a kid's game that we still coach, but we coaching grown men. And just watching him, the way he energized his coaching staff, the way he energized his players at 70 plus years old. He
Yeah.
comes in the building and he's full of energy. And you look at him and you say, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it every day also. So that's something that he just watching the way he moved, really was something I put into my memory bank to help me in my coaching career in the future.
So you're with Geno Smith, whose career was not as great as you would want it to be at the start of his career. But when I remember watching you play, I saw a little bit of Geno Smith or Kerry Joseph in Geno Smith or vice versa. Did you see that when you were coaching this guy, just in terms of adversity and having to go through the ups and downs?
You know what I did, and I'm able to relate to the things that he's going through. You know, the frustrations that he's going through, and I was able to connect with him and really just continue to push him and encourage him just every day to be at his very best. And when the opportunity came for him, he was prepared for it. And I look at my situation, you know, having to go from safety back to quarterback. When I had that opportunity in Ottawa, I took advantage of it and I ran with it, and it turned into a 12-year career in the CFL. So just having that experience and knowing everything that I've had to deal with, I'm able to relate to the guys and really just, really look for the moments when you feel that they're kind of down, discouraged, to make sure that I continue to lift them up and continue to push them to be at their very best.
You know me, when my friend Craig Dickinson wasn't renewed as the head coach of the Rough Riders, I was pushing for you and for Henry to be in the mix for the head coach. I think they made a great choice in Corey Mace, but I do see you as a head coach down the line. What do you like about this? What intrigues you other than being employed, Kerry? What intrigues you about the Chicago Bears quarterback coaching job?
You know what? This is a historical, great organization, has a lot of history, but also just the culture that has been built in that building, from the owners down to the president to the GM, assistant GM to the coaches. Is a great culture that they have built over the last few years, uh, and they're wanting to bring that winning tradition back, and they're doing it the right way. They're doing it because they are people that care about winning, but most importantly, care about people. And that's what excites me about going into that building every day, is that you know that you're around great people that love the game of football and that's going to do everything that they can to help support you and the staff and the people in the building to be successful. And that's all you can ask for as a coach.
Mhm. So Caleb Evans, the first overall pick, comes in there, and the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer in terms of the quarterback position. What do you like about him? Maybe that's an unrealistic goal his first year, but what are you hoping to see from this first overall pick, Caleb Evans, and what do you like from him so
Williams.
far? Or Williams, sorry. And
Williams.
yeah, I'm getting him mixed up with the Ottawa guy and the Montreal guy, Caleb Williams. What do you like about
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, the first overall pick?
You know what? Just his passion, his love for the game, uh, and when you really get to know him, the love he has for his teammates and people, you really see how genuine, how authentic he is, and his work ethic. So he's a special talent. That's why we drafted him first overall. He's a guy that is going to have a long career, and it's just a joy to work with him. Just when I see him, I see a little bit of myself.
Yeah.
The way I played the game, he's talented. He's accurate with the football, and he's just a guy that's like an artist when he's back there playing the game of football. He's going to create a picture. It might not look great to everybody, but the finished work is awesome. It's magnificent, and he's going to be fun to coach. He's been fun to coach so far, and it's just going to be fun to watch him grow throughout into this system and in the NFL.
Do you have to kind of because you were a scrambler too, right? Because of your athleticism, do you kind of have to? Because in the NFL, you still have to be able to throw from the pocket, and young guys sometimes they want to rely on their legs too much. You kind of got to rein them in a little bit. I know we're early in the process, but what do you see from that side of things? Because some guys just, I don't see what I want to see now. I'm going to take off and use my legs.
Nah, you know what? He's great in the pocket. He's a guy that he can throw on time, and just the things that he can do off schedule with his legs moving around is a bonus. You saw it when he was at USC,
Mhm.
but then you see him sit in the pocket and make those down the field. So he has all the tools that's needed. It's just really just getting him accustomed to the NFL game, getting him adapted to the system that we're running, the schemes that we're running, and he's buying into it. He studies his butt off, and he's just been fun to work with. And we, like you said, you don't take away his superpowers. You let him have fun and you let him play football.
Yeah, so I think in the media sometimes, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, we we overanalyze. You go back to Caleb Williams, and you were talking about at USC, and I forget what game it was, but he lost the key game, and he was up in the stands with his family, and he was kind of crying. And I know in the lead up to the draft, people are like, should the Bears take this guy? I don't want my quarterback crying. I don't want my leader crying. Do you think sometimes in the media, just because we're talking heads and we got to fill time, we overanalyze stuff like that? Because I think sometimes we do.
I really do believe that because until you really get to know the person, what you see on TV, you don't know what emotions he's having at that moment. Emotions are good. I've cried. I won the great. I won the Grey Cup. I cried.
Yeah.
My last college football game at McNeese State, we were 13-0 going into the semifinals against Marshall University and lost 13-1. My college career was over. I still have the picture of me with my head in my hands and my face in my hands, crying with my dad next to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. You have emotions. He knew at the time that his college career, to win a championship was probably going to be over because of that loss. The
Mm-hmm.
kid has emotions. You know what? When you see a man crying, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because people care. And I think some people take it out of context of why, you know, just people take it out of context, not knowing the reason behind it.
Boy, football's gone offensive, and you look. I just have to look at the Chicago Bears. You had DJ Moore come in there last year. Dunze, you draft the great receiver, and then I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, but I'm a big. I'll move my mic there. I'm a
I see it.
big San Diego Chargers, or San Diego of Los Angeles Chargers, I like to say, and I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. Okay, the Slayer. Just what can a guy like that do for a young guy like Caleb Evans? Because he'd be like the security blanket, right? That guy, when you need a first down, you get it to 13, Keenan Allen.
You know what? When I think this organization has done a great job of bringing in some great talent to put around the young quarterback, and I think it's important. When you have guys that's veteran guys, it just kind of it takes a lot of weight off that rookie quarterback to feel that he has to do everything. I think about '07. I think about our Grey Cup run and my MOP year. The talent that I had around me as a quarterback, I didn't have to do everything. When you look in the backfield, the running backs that I had, you look at the receivers, you look
Mm-hmm.
at the offensive line I had, all I had to do is just put the ball where it needs to be and let them go run the show. And, it takes a lot of weight off you. So I just think the organization has done a great job when you think about a guy like Keenan Allen, who's established, probably a future Hall of Famer, DJ Moore, the tight ends with Cole Kmet, Gerald Evans,
Mm-hmm.
Everett, the running back, DeAndre Swift. It's just a boatload of talent that can take a lot of pressure off the young guy just to go out there and have fun, play football, and distribute the rock.
And you guys, all of a sudden, I'm trying to rack my brain here, but your division all of a sudden is a powerhouse. You look what Jordan Love did in his first year as the quarterback with the Green Bay Packers. I expect him to continue that upward trend. The Detroit Lions back on the scene. You guys, and let's not forget about the Minnesota Vikings. I know Kirk Cousins is gone, but they've got some great talent there. Anytime you got Jefferson on your team, you've got a chip, a chair, and a chance on offense. That's going to be a very competitive, highly entertaining division. I think the best division in football right now to start the season.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's early in the process. There's a lot of talent within the division. Teams have been playing well, so it's going to be a lot of fun. The game is already hard. It's very competitive, so it's going to be. You got to bring it every week. You got to bring it every day to get better. And at the end of it, that's what you want to do, right? Let's get better every day, and then we go out there and play football. And at the end when the clock goes off, we look up at the scoreboard and just come out on top more than we don't.
Yeah. So 2 more quick questions for you. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate your time, Kerry. So you were in the hotbed that was Saskatchewan. I don't think I can. I know in Saskatchewan they think they have the greatest fans in the world, and they do in the CFL. But
Yeah.
when you get to the States, it's football on steroids. But you could probably draw a little similarity. You talked about the historic nature of the Bears, the Riders not as winning as the Bears, but very historic in terms of, the logo and everything like that. How does it, you kind of have a little bit of a Saskatchewan feel? Because you're in a place where football matters. Not to say football didn't matter in Seattle, but you know what I mean. Chicago, one of the hard knock teams in the league.
You know what? Football does matter here. It's a lot of passion. When you just run into people, from like realtors, people that you come across, everybody loves the Chicago Bears.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of history. When you talk about the Walter Payton and Jim McMahon, I mean, you look at the guys that's going into the Hall of Fame this year,
Mhm.
Steve McMichael, Devin Hester, it's like it's a lot of history here. The Brian Urlacher.
Mhm.
It's a lot of love, it's a lot of history, and it's a lot of passion. And I've heard so many great things here. I've only played here once as an opponent, but just what you hear about the fan base, what you see about the fan base, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm just really excited to get a feel of it.
Actually, two more questions. They both pertain to you specifically. So, as a player, you'd watch film. I did this right. I got to do this better. What are you doing right as a coach? And for this year, what do you want to do better to better your game as a coach?
For me, it's just continue to evolve as overall, as a quarterback coach. This is, like I said, I've been an assistant quarterback coach. Now I'm the quarterback coach in the room, and just continue to evolve and continue to help my players grow. I think that's the most important thing is making that connection and helping players get better, helping them evolve to be the better player, the best that they can be, and pull out everything that's inside of them to give them a chance to succeed and help the team win. That's the most important thing for me that I thrive on every day of how can I find those little nuances in my coaching technique, uh, in my film study, to just give those guys everything that they need to succeed. And sometimes you make mistakes as a coach, and you got to go back and you go back and you look in the mirror and say, okay, I can do this a little better. But one thing about me is I've realized is as a coach, it's not about you. It's not about Kerry Joseph. It's about how can I convey that message to those guys to go out and perform at the best of their ability. That's the most important thing.
You
Uh,
you got you got to be stoked though. Like I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. You got to be jacked, man. You can't play, but this is the closest to being able to play. You got the number one overall pick, and you're his quarterback coach. And when I think about that, that's part counselor. Like you're like his best friend. He's gonna have some tough times, and he's probably gonna turn to Kerry Joseph for some words of wisdom, some comforting words, maybe sometimes a kick in the butt. Like you're the buffer between him and the OC, and then you're at the ground level even before the head coach. Like this is, I'm actually excited for you, man.
You know what? I'm pumped myself. That's why it's all about building relationships. I think coaching is about the relationship part first. Building that trust, believing in each other, having that confidence to be able to help him because you do go up and down. But it's about keeping an even keel, staying composed throughout the process. Even in '07, like I can share '07. I
Mhm.
remember getting benched in the game. Uh, but in '07, it's the same year I was the league MVP. The MOP is about you're going to face adversity, but how do you come out of it? I had guys like Ken Austin. I had guys like Marcus Crandall, Darian Durant,
Mhm.
that just was there that had my back. That's what I have to be for this guy here and the quarterbacks in that room. So I'm pumped about it. I tell you what, Ballsy, I said in the meetings, I'm one way, but man, when I get on that grass, I feel like Hey, I feel like a little 22-year-old again. I just stay out the way to make sure nobody hit me anymore. I can't, I don't get hit.
Hey, lastly, I'll let you go on this because I asked this of Nathan Rourke because it's important when you got a young guy like that and he's trying to keep that NFL dream alive. He was in Jacksonville, didn't quite work out the way he wanted, even though he did well in the preseason. A cup of coffee in New England. Now he's trying to catch on with the Giants. But behind the scenes, he's coming home. He's frustrated. He's got to have a great support system and his wife, Emily. You can fill us in because I forget your wife's name, but here's
Courtney.
okay, Courtney. So think about that. I want to think about it. You talk about it being very nomadic, right? Packing up, flooded apartment. We're already packing up, honey, because we're already going somewhere. You end up in Chicago, but you don't know. It could be there 5 years, 2 years. Just talk about that support system behind the scenes. And we get to see you. You get all the pub. I don't interview Courtney, but what's it like, for her and for your family? And how important is that to you so you can do your thing?
I tell you what, it's very important to have that support system behind you. The hours that we put in as coaches, the hours that you put in as players, the dedication, the sacrifice that you make is very important because they make sacrifices also. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you talk about wives having to move from place to place, job to job, you know, or, you know, if you have kids, making sure you're taking care of the kids while the husband is at work, you got to have that backbone. And it's very important, but it's also most important when things don't go well, you know, and you have to be able to move, you know, like Courtney and like she stayed back in Seattle for 3 months. She just left out of there, you
Mm-hmm.
know, of just having that understanding of, okay, we might be separated for a few months, but we know, you know, it's always going to work itself out. I just think it's very important. And Courtney, for me, has been there and it's been great. And for the young buck, you know, hey, you just got to keep your head up, you know, because he's not facing nothing that other men has never faced,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but you just got to keep believing. I think that's the biggest thing is keep believing. Even like for myself, when I left the NFL as a safety and went to Canada and went back to quarterback, I was told, well, it was going to take a little time because I hadn't played quarterback in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't believe that in my mind. My time was now, and I believe that. So you have to believe that things are going to work out, but also it's through your hard work and your dedication. And that's my encouragement to him, but also to his wife and to the wives out there. Man, they don't understand how important it is to have that support. It's very important.
Mm. Well, I'm a Bears fan this year. Now, I like the Chargers, but I'm cheering for the Bears because I like Keenan Allen, but I like Kerry Joseph. Thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it. We'll circle back
Appreciate it.
again sometime, okay?
All right, Ballsy, appreciate you for having me on.
People watching and listening to this podcast know I like talking football, but this guy was a guy I was really looking forward to in my past life, talking Blue Jays and Major League Baseball. I'm calling this segment Taking Cuts, former Major League catcher with the Jays, Orioles, Diamondbacks, and now you'll see him on Sportsnet as an analyst for Blue Jays broadcast. He joins us from Tennessee. He is Caleb Joseph. Welcome to the podcast. I appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you, man.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, okay, so let's just get right to it, man. Blue Jays, what do you make of this disappointing start to the year? By the way, well, I'll get to that second part in a second. First of all, what do you make of this start?
Underachieving. I think that's probably the best word that I can come up with. You said disappointing, and it's been that. They have really struggled offensively. When they have hit, the pitching has let them down. Their defense has been pretty good, but this was a run prevention team that was hoping that the offense would pick back up after a lackluster 2023. It just has not happened. And they banked on a lot of things going right for this season. They banked on everybody on the pitching staff really being able to duplicate what they did, which is a lot to ask. They banked on the core really getting back to career year numbers, which would be Springer, Bichette, and Guerrero Jr. That hasn't quite happened. The free agent signing of Justin Turner has been nice for the first month, not so nice for the second month. They're in a bit of disarray right now because they don't have a ton down in the farm. There's a lot of questions going on. How are they going to proceed? It's going to be interesting to see how the next 4 to 6 weeks start to unfold for this club because they're sort of pigeonholed into having to go after it because of the money they've spent and because of what they don't have in the minor league system.
And that was the second part of my thing. The money they spent, and also that third wild card. It gives teams hope, but at the same time puts them kind of in no man's land. Do you go for it? Do you not go for it? What do we do here? That kind of it's good for baseball, but it puts the guys in the upstairs in the office kind of in a predicament.
No doubt about it. It's a bit of a trap. And the Blue Jays have been fortunate with that third wild card spot the last couple of years, being able to sneak in there and grab a playoff spot, probably due to the expanded playoffs. Yet, what it does is it sort of pigeonholes you into really wanting to go after it and not being a seller early on, like the Pirates are probably going to be an early seller. We've already seen a trade in Miami involving their best hitter, Luis Arraez. So I don't see that happening quickly for the Blue Jays, but I don't know if you're Ed Rogerson, you own the team. I don't know how you can spend all of that money on the renovations. I don't know how you can spend all of that money on the payroll and say, okay, let's go ahead and trade off some assets. I think their number one goal is to put people in the seats this year, and I think they're just going to have to ride it out, even if they're 10, 12, 15 games out of first place when the trade deadline hits. It's a miserable feeling in Toronto. Walking around, the people are doom and gloom, and I understand why. And especially once they've made the playoffs, you're expecting bigger things. You're expecting a win in a playoff series. They haven't been able to do that. So it is a lot of questions coming out of Toronto for the Blue Jays right now.
What's it like being in a clubhouse like that when you're in a market that really is not just Toronto's team, but for the most part, Canada's baseball team? You're in that locker room, things are expected of you, and it's just not going your way. And we're not talking about like a CFL season where it's 18 games or an NFL season where it's 17. We got 162 of these bad boys, half of those at home. But what's it like being in a clubhouse like that?
It's a good question. I remember being on a 2016 team that was expected to win, coming off of a pretty decent year, and we struggled to the finish line just to get to 81 and 81. And there was a point in the season where you just kind of collectively felt it. You felt like this just isn't going to be our year. We are trying to stay positive. We're trying to get it going. We're 2 weeks away from a hot streak that can really propel us into the position we want. But it just never happened, and we weren't able to sync it up. And what I mean by that is the offense clicking at the same time, the pitching clicking at the same time, the defense clicking at the same time. We would have these parts that would work for 2 or 3 games, and then the other part would let us down. And then it was just this huge, imagine a Tetris, like the pieces of the puzzle just fitting together perfectly. We couldn't get it to fit perfectly. Now, as a player, you're constantly optimistic. I think some of the people around baseball call us the most optimistic people on the planet because there's always tomorrow and you play 162 games. So I've talked to a bunch of players in the clubhouse and they're not panicking, but they know and they feel the sense of urgency. And sometimes when you're clouded with the doubt and the let's get it going, the sense of urgency, it can start to weigh on you. And right around now was right when I remember feeling that in that 81 and 81 season when we were expected to win. It was about 4 to 6 weeks before the trade deadline. You kind of feel like this is our last go at it. We really got to give the GM a reason to really add. But again, I don't really see them subtracting. I see them possibly doing a little bit of 50-50. They might sell a piece or two and add at the same time. A lot of teams have done that where they try and put themselves up a little bit easier for the future while also subtracting, but it doesn't look like a full-on sellout. So there's a weird gray area that the players are stuck in because you're really wanting to go after it. But at the same time, you just keep playing this 50-50 win one, lose one. They've got to find a way to get on like a 5-7 streak, like 2 times in a row to really get going. And they just haven't been able to do it.
So, Caleb Joseph, you mentioned they expected this and they expected that. Were those unrealistic expectations going into this season from the management side of things?
Yeah, I think especially when you're looking on leaning on 15, 16, 17 pitchers that had basically career years, in my opinion, to do it all over again. That's tough. I mean, what they were able to do starting pitcher-wise in the absence of Alek Manoah and really survive with 4 starting pitchers, that's going to take its toll on you at some point. They were able to dodge that bullet last year and stay healthy, which was miraculous in my opinion. But then coming into this season, you've seen some struggles from Bassett. You've definitely seen some struggles from Kevin Gausman. And it's just these things start to find you. And they found them in 2024. The bullpen has been a real Achilles heel of this team. Everybody loves talking about the offense, which I agree has been a massive problem. But the bullpen has been incredibly shaky. They've had ups and down seasons from a lot of their key contributors. And that's tough. I always had a manager one time that said, every time you have a really good season out of the bullpen, you have to find a way to shake it up. But it doesn't really make sense because you just had a huge year out of the bullpen. You think just do it over again, but it is so difficult to have back-to-back years of really good bullpen health and really good bullpen production year in, year out. So they kind of were pigeonholed. And I've said this before. To me, it was if the front office said every player on this team, if they have the best year on the back of their baseball card, we've got a chance. And that is a risky proposition, going from the bullpen guys to the starters to a lot of the offense. And it was a huge risk to take. It obviously has not panned out for them yet. I think there were some mistakes made.
Okay, so I'm wearing a San Diego Padres shirt, that's my team ever since Tony Gwynn, 1984. Okay, I'm older than you. Don't hold that against me. The Padres are an interesting team when I talk about the third wild card, okay? Because a couple years ago, they went for it. They got to the NLCS, lost to the Phillies. Last year, not very good. This year, they're a 500 baseball team. They added Dylan Cease, a rise you talk about. They're looking at adding again, but then they subtracted a bit coming into this season. So they're kind of one of those teams in a gray area too. I think everybody wants to be the Arizona Diamondbacks, get a wild card, hit lightning in a bottle. What do you make of the Padres? Because once again, you got Tatis, who isn't hitting like he used to after, what happened with him, the motorcycle injury, the PEDs. Machado's coming off elbow surgery. They're fortunate that Cronenworth and Profar are having otherworldly starts to the season, or they'd be in big time problems.
It just shows, in my opinion, what Juan Soto means to a club. Look at what happens when he goes to the Yankees. They have had issues with their lineup for years now. Everybody wanted Steinbrenner not Steinbrenner. It's Cashman to blow it up. They've wanted him to just totally blow up that lineup. It's aging. It's unathletic. They add Soto, and miraculously now they look like an incredibly deep lineup. So when I look at the Padres, they are the team that spins and spins and spins and spins, and they just can't figure it out. And when they feel like they have one area locked down, which could be the offense, then they have trouble with the starting pitching. And then when they've got the starting pitching and they feel like they've got the offense, then the bullpen is lackluster. And it just shows you really how difficult it is to go deep and win in Major League Baseball. It's just year in, year out. It's takes its toll on players, and I like that they're going for it. I love it, but adding and subtracting, it can disrupt the flow of a season as well, and having guys in certain positions. I think a lot of times when you lose the starting pitching that they have lost and been inconsistent with that tends to lead to a lot of pressure for the offense, especially when you're inserting guys that you got to score 5 or 6 runs a day, and then by the time you get those guys really feeling good, then another guy comes back. It's just the constant shuffle is tough. But yeah, San Diego is an intriguing team in that you look at their record and think they should be way better than this. And they've had trouble in the last couple of years really syncing it up. And it just shows when you have teams like the Dodgers that are perennial contenders year in, year out, they're doing so many things right. So many people think it's the payroll, but look at the San Diego Padres. I mean, they're spending with the best of them and just can't sync it up.
Okay, so let's tie those two teams in because they're kind of the same, the Padres and the Blue Jays. How much of it is it on the manager? When you've got world-class talent like Tatis and Machado and those, even Bogarts got hurt, broke his shoulder, but he still wasn't playing great before he broke his shoulder, at least consistently. And you got Bichette over here, and you got Guerrero and Springer. How much is it on Schultz or Bob Melvin before that in San Diego, and John Schneider here because he's under a lot of heat in Toronto? Or how much is it on you guys, the players? Right. Come on. I got it. I'm making $300 million. I know too many times fans and media look at the dollar signs and they're human beings, but how much is it on the guys? Hey, you got to show up and play baseball.
Yeah, I'd say 80% of it is on the guys. And look, if Tatis, if Machado, if all of these expect, even Bogarts, really, honestly, Bogarts is kind of the key piece for me, is just kind of riding the wave and not playing to standard. And that's why you sign guys. You sign guys expecting them to produce X amount. You start to project. It's like the hot word in baseball right now is projections. You project all of these things, and when the player doesn't meet the standard, it throws the projections off. Now, is the player not making those adjustments because of the coaching, because of the messaging? There are amazing managers that get through to players for some reason or another. And I really feel like that the experienced guys like a Bruce Bochy, and I liked Bob Melvin in San Diego. I thought that was going to be a really nice fit. Now, when you look and Bob Melvin and AJ Preller button heads, now you got a problem there. And so it's hard because I thought he was going to go in there and really turn that ship around. And from the players that I have spoke with, they really liked him. But messaging can be a big issue too. Now, for the Blue Jays, I do understand why people are wanting John Schneider removed. I get that. But you can't turn chicken bleep into chicken salad just by switching the manager. And that's kind of the point that we're at right now. Is it's one thing if everybody is hitting on all cylinders and he's making boneheaded moves to cost them the game. I mean, John Schneider, he has switched the lineup as many times as you possibly could. He's
Yeah.
tried to put everybody in a position. There haven't really been any egregious moves that I've seen where it's just so blatant that you could actually pinpoint a win or a loss on him. But I think a lot of that goes back to the previous two playoff series and what happened in the last two playoff series that kind of has people on edge a little bit. But at the end of the day, for me, it's the lineup that's constructed. There's only so much a manager can do, but there are certain managers that can really give a team a certain type of message and a certain type of ease and calm when they're going through the battles that they can really get out of them quicker. I can only count about two or three on one hand right now, and unfortunately, one of them's not in Toronto.
Yeah. So, lastly, I'll let you go on this. So Marcano, who's now a Padre but was a Pirate, gets banned. First time since Pete Rose that somebody's been banned for life from baseball. 4 other guys suspended a year, weren't betting on their teams. Marcano bet on his team but wasn't playing. Here's what I want to ask you. Not just baseball. We've seen it in the Canadian Football League. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in the NBA, a Raptor player getting banned for life. It feels like a slippery slope. The revenue is great, but how do you feel as a former athlete, now an analyst, as it relates to the integrity of sports going forward?
There's so many betting websites. On Sportsnet, we promote betting websites nightly on our show. And it does bring an element of excitement, I guess, for the fans that enjoy playing that game. It is easy to get sucked into, I would say, as a player, especially when most of your career is a minor leaguer and you're still not making that much money. And for me, if you're going to do a lifetime ban on the first try, you've got to have that same type of standard when it comes to performance enhancing drugs. So I just don't understand how a player can bet on baseball, especially to win. Now, if you're throwing a game, I totally get that. You got to go. Like that's no good for the sport. But if you're betting for your team to win, and I still obviously not sure where I stand on that, but comparative to taking performance enhancing drugs, where you basically get 3 strikes, all you have to do is sit out 81 games the first, and then you start moving down the line. I don't see how those are even remotely close. I mean, one is just blatant cheating, and the other one is see, I know it sounds crazy. I kind of like it when players bet for their team because they are really invested, and of course they're invested in playing well because that's how they're.
Well, Caleb, I think we're naive to think that this is the first guy that's ever done it. Like people do. Come on, give me a break. You got players bet on the back of planes. I've been on planes where you're betting their per diem and stuff. Baseball guys tell me they do that. Like, come on, give me a break with that. And the other thing is, and not just baseball, because I don't want to just pick on baseball, but just in general, there's pick and choose justice. Look at the Houston Astros. They got to keep the World Series banging trash cans.
It doesn't make any sense, right? And that's where I'm at is, okay, if you're going to really lay the hammer down on one, then lay it down for all of it. But this one singular issue, it seems super gray to me, and I don't like it. Imagine golf. I mean, there's more betting going on in golf than I've ever seen. I mean, I play with some buddies here, and they're recreational, and they're yelling out like double press, triple, all these words or whatever as my ball is in the air, and I'm like, and before I know it, I'm down like $50. I'm like, what is that? Like, I have no idea. But I mean, can you imagine if golf like got into betting? Like the whole PGA Tour would probably be whacked. But yeah. I don't get it. Just hold the same standard. And of course, it's always that one guy, and he'll be famous for this. And much like Pete Rose, I mean, give me a break. Like the guy suffered enough.
At this time, I agree with you. Let's let him back in baseball. And he bet on his team. It's not like he put Michael Ball in to pitch against the Dodgers, right? Like he was trying to win money for himself.
That's where I'm selfishly okay with it, because I think obviously you're more inclined, like you're really trying hard to win the game. Now you bet against, no tolerance for that, but he was going for it. And again, I might be on an island here thinking that from a player's perspective. I like competitiveness. Especially in today's game. I mean, now you slide in the second and you barely sneeze on the guy and everybody's, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, I don't know if everybody's going to be checking if you're okay if you got a couple 100,000 on the game or whatever, you know? Like, I'm
well, 100%. Yeah, you might make it better for the game if Caleb. I'm just using you as an example. If Caleb Joseph has 500, he's bet 500 that he'll get a triple. He's going to try to if the game's not, you know what I mean. He's going to try to stretch it. He's going to try to make it exciting.
I like that. See, I like knowing that would be the case, but we're probably on an island here. But
that's why we're doing this show together. Nobody else. Hey, man, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Can't wait to have you on a weekly basis.
Perfect. We'll do it again. Thanks.
The host is not necessarily the smartest guy, and my detractors would say that. So we got to add some smarts to this show, and I plan to have this guy on as a regular guest. I had him on in a previous life where they told me, get this, you talk too much football. You talk too much CFL. Imagine being on a CFL host radio station, like of a team, and you're told you talk too much CFL and too much football. Well, I get to talk as much damn well football as I please here because I'm the boss. I like it that way. And this guy is the dean at the Edwards School of Business in Saskatoon. He is Keith Willoughby, a longtime friend of mine, and he is now the dean of Ballsy Uncut. Welcome to the show.
Ballsy, pleasure to join with you, and thank you very much for the invitation today.
Oh, it's awesome, man. Can't wait to have you. Now, you do CFL simulations. We'll get into that in a second. But just your initial thoughts on training camp. I did not go to training camp. I didn't watch one lick of training camp. I did watch, thanks to the great job by CFL Plus, to watch the preseason games on TV with the audio feeds from the radio teams. I did watch that. Just your overall impressions of what you're seeing under this team with, under Corey Mace and Mark Mueller, because he's a new addition too.
I think, Ballsy, what I'm most excited about as a longtime Rough Rider fan is to see a rejuvenation of leadership on the sidelines. I think over the past couple of years, it got woefully apparent, especially as we got post-Labor Day in 2022 and 2023. The team just lacked juice, that there was no enthusiasm, no zip, no drive, no nothing, no power. I think this year, again, what I've seen from Coach Mace so far, what I've seen from the coaching staff, there's a more positive, enthusiastic attitude out there. Personally, I don't read too much into the 2-0 record in the preseason. We were 2-0 in 2023, and we know how that ended up. But I am excited by what I see in terms of leadership on the sidelines, leadership on the team, leadership in the locker room, because I think that in and of itself could bear for some better situations this year than we saw for 2022 and 2023.
Are you surprised that they didn't do a clean sweep with the regime? Are you surprised? Dickinson, we knew wasn't going to be back. And Craig's a friend of mine. I just talked to, earlier this week about loyalty, and there's no loyalty, like there's no gray in loyalty. It's black and white. So I'm one not to throw my friends under the bus. I think Craig could have done a better job in some situations, but I also think he was hung out to dry. My question to you, once again, circling back, do you think they should have done a clean sweep of the regime and just started over?
I think the challenge with a clean sweep is that it really puts you back in terms of player development, drafting Canadian talent in the CFL draft. I think, and I was one of those fans, I'll admit, Ballsy, that was really concerned over this past year with just the state of the team, coach and general manager included. What may have been Jeremy's saving grace as a GM is the fact that we have recruited some exceptional Canadian talent in the draft, so we've been able to at least get a pipeline of people that have Canadian passports that can play for the Rough Riders, which may have saved him in terms of not being a casualty in the regime that was to be forgotten in the past year.
Yeah, so
that's when you go ahead.
Here's what I would say to that. Okay, playing devil's advocate, because I can do that a little more now. Yes, you're right with what you said. Injuries play a big factor in it. By the way, I think U of S grad, Dan Farthing, cousin of mine, is one of the biggest off-season additions for this football team that a lot of people aren't talking about. Injuries have been something that the Bombers have been able to curtail. If Dan Farthing can bring his magic to the Riders, he should have never been gassed in the first place, let's be honest. Another guy that shouldn't have been gassed. He shouldn't have been gassed in the first place. So I love to see what he's going to do. But back to Jeremy O'Day. Yes, you're right. He's hit on some draft picks. Fine. This O-line has not been good for the most part. There are pieces that have been good, the Logan Furlans of the world, but by and large, he is one of the best offensive linemen that's ever played for the Rough Riders, Jeremy O'Day, and he has come up very short in that category. And I'm just not sure how a guy whose team went over for the last 2 years after Labor Day got a 3-year contract extension. That is a real head scratcher, and I think I'm speaking from the majority, not the minority.
I think the good point, Ballsy. I think where we're seeing it right now is the Rough Riders obviously need to do something. There was a trust that had eroded within Rider Nation. You saw it during the last part of the 2023 season with attendance, bums and seats at Mosaic. They were probably less than half capacity when you got into October of 2023. I think something needed to be done to rejuvenate the trust, the enthusiasm of the Rider fan base. Obviously, the coach was a simple one. GM, yeah, it's interesting. I concede your point that the O-line has been deplorable. And in fact, if you circle back the clock even more, we at one time had Brandon Labatt, Canadian. We at one time had Darius Bladdock, a Canadian, Dakota Shepley, a Canadian, Braden Schramm, a Canadian. We traded away Patty Neufeld for Alex Hall in 2013. I know that was before O'Day was GM, but O'Day as GM did draft in 2016, number 1 overall, Josiah St. John. And we pretty much blew the load on that one in terms of our ability to get a solid, long-time CFL star. So, again, when I agree that the O-line has been deplorable, and what I'm looking for in 2024 is improved performance in the O-line. If the O-line is shaky that it's been the past couple of years, it doesn't matter that we've got new receivers in and new running back in, because we're not going to have the time to function as an offense.
Well, right, and that goes back to the whole, it's one thing to, I'll say this, Craig Dickinson looked pretty good early on in his tenure as the coach, okay? There were players on that field that were brought in by Chris Jones, and Craig Dickinson looked pretty good with that stable of players. They've kind of deteriorated over the last couple of years. I will say this. I think there's been some good free agent signings by the Saskatchewan Roughriders in this offseason. So they probably won free agency, but that doesn't necessarily gain you a championship, as you know. So of the free agent signings, Keith Willoughby, who do you, who's at the top of your list? Give me one that you're like, okay, I really like that one. That's going to be a high-impact guy.
Well, it's easy to say AJ Ouellette, because he's going to see the ball like 15 to 20 times a game in terms of running and receiving. So I think that's one that's easy to look at. I know this might be on maybe not the pick a lot of people will think of. I know he was a former Rider 9 years ago, but getting Jamarcus Hardwick back, and I know he's 32. I know he's got a lot of mileage on the body, but I think that there is an ability to bring an old lineman back into the Rough Rider fold, somebody who's won championships elsewhere, who comes from a winning culture, Winnipeg. I think that signing will solidify the right tackle position. We're hoping Trevor Reed can play left tackle, but if Hardwick can give us some quality snaps at right tackle, I think his emergence in the locker room will be really beneficial to the team going forward. That's why I was really excited to see that signing again. I wish we could circle back the clock and we hadn't canned him in 2015, because we said goodbye to somebody who's been an all-star for several years.
Yeah, so circling back to just the recent releases, I wasn't really shocked to see any of them. Mason Fine had a chance to prove himself. I guess if you want to be a detractor, and I'm trying not to be a full detractor, you could say, why did they let Dolagala go and then end up cutting Mason Fine? But that comes down to a coaching decision, so you can't lay that at the GM's feet. They obviously decided that Mason didn't show them what they thought he would show them, and he's had enough time. Pipkin's a journeyman. I like the fact myself that with no rooting interest, Shea Patterson looks like he has an upside, and of course this Cohn kid. So you got to find that next guy. Hopefully they can learn from Trevor Harris.
I agree, Ballsy, and not that I'm Shea Patterson's agent, but I know with a lot of the conversations of the Rider Nation and training camp, a lot focused on Fine versus Patterson. Who's your 2v2 going into 2024? You don't want to see a player cut, because you hate to see a dream end. But I think the upside with Shea Patterson is phenomenal. I think his ability to stretch a defense and to give life to the offense when he's playing will present something that Fine didn't have. Fine may go down, arguably, as the architect of the greatest Hail Mary in Rider history, but it's a pretty short a shelf life in terms of, to me, his ability to be your QB2 for 2024. Again, getting Patterson, who played at University of Michigan, he's played in the big lights. Jack Cohn, Notre Dame, played in the big lights. I think you've got now some really exceptional younger QBs. I mean, Trevor Harris, again, who is going to be in his late 30s. So let's not roll the fact that he was injured last year, missed 14 games of the regular season. We need some solidity, and I think that's where the stability provided by Patterson will be illuminating for what Fine couldn't do for the better part of 2023.
Keith Willoughby here, the Dean, the Edwards School of Business and the Dean of the Ballsy Uncut podcast. So, Braden Lenius has been hurt. He left for the NFL. The NFL is the apple of all football players' eye, okay? There's life-changing money. He goes there, he puts on a lot of weight, gets jerked around after 4 days, comes back, and previous to that was really hitting his stride as the Riders. Like so many times, you see guys go, and they come back, and they're just not the same, whether it's an Andy Fantus or, I guess Dressler went and came back, and he was still pretty good. But Lenius is done, and now Joe comes in here. He's an intriguing prospect. They picked him in the 7th round. He probably would have been higher, and I know him well because him and my son came out at the same time as receivers, 1-2 in Canada then. So I know this kid. He's talented, but he started at Clemson, ended up in a JUCO. That speaks to, ran a 4.9 something at the combine, which kind of tells you he didn't take it seriously enough. And even Coach Mace kind of intimated in his remarks after some practices, this kid has all the talent. He's just got to learn to be a pro. So that's going to be a key for a Joe.
It is. I'm glad you mentioned about the Canadian receiver talent, because you think of the seasons where we've had success, it typically hinges on successful Canadian content at the receiving position. Think back to the Royal Canadian Air Force that we had back in the days of Bagg and Fantus and Claremont and Rob Bagg. Like you had exceptional, Chris Getzlaff's another good. We had exceptional talent. I was not surprised that Lenius didn't survive the training camp cuts. Probably pulling down a higher salary, so that's going to impinge on the Riders' ability to keep him in the starting lineup. The injury didn't help. To me, again, he had a successful beginning when he came here in 2021, post-pandemic, lit it up a little bit. But the Riders have a pretty solid group when you look at people like KSB, Samuel Emilus, who's in year number 3, Mitch Picton, who never drops a pass. And like that's somebody who can play that wide receiver position, play your field wide receiver, and do really, really well. To me, it's a wild card. I really about work ethic. I really seeing somebody who basically went through Last Chance U on like a Netflix show. To me, if Coach Mace can get him pointed in the right direction, he has exceptional athletic ability. If he can provide the on-field presence and the emotional connection, if his head can do what his body is, I think we've got a real gem in the rough here in terms of a Canadian receiver. I think, again, that really puts us well for having that depth that we need going into a 2024 campaign.
Any concerns about Lothar? Seems like he can't hit the broadside of a barn. I love Brent Lothar. I think he's an NFL kicker, a Sunday kicker, as Luke Mullender would like to say. But he's struggled so far here out of the gate.
He has. Think back to last year, there were some struggles that he had. He is, when he's good, obviously he's automatic. But I hate seeing those makeable field goals that are missed. I hate seeing the point afters that are missed, because you're leaving points off the field, and you don't want to have that in a Canadian Football League or any football game. I am concerned. Again, I don't know if I'm to the point now I'm going to bring in a kicker in competition. I don't think Korsak can get duty to be your consistent field goal kicker. So I'm not yet concerned when I'm pulling the plug. But I'm basically, the check engine light is coming on right now if I'm looking at the Riders in terms of the kicking ability, because that to me can really separate yourself from being a first, second, third place team to finishing in the cellar.
Dude is a heck of a weapon, though, Korsak. He can flip a field, directional kicking. Really like that guy. All right, Keith, you do CFL simulations at the CFL.ca website. You did it on a previous show I used to do. I'm going to get you to do it here, but that starts, what, about week 4, right?
Yeah, week 4, so probably on early July, we'll have the first release of the CFL simulations. Typically, they're on the CFL website by Labor Day. They like to post them on usually halfway-ish through the season. I've been doing this for a decade now, looking forward to another year, and hopefully, as a Rider fan, it'll be more enthusiastic for me than it's been the past couple of years, where it's been pretty woeful to run the simulations post-Labor Day, when our chances were dropping quite quickly.
Yeah, so before the simulations, you're a big Rider fan, so you have green and white glasses on, although not today. You got beautiful glasses. But looking at the landscape, where do you see the Riders' record? If injuries are a big deal, and that'll always affect any CFL team. If they can stay relatively healthy with Dan Farthing, now their strength and conditioning coach, keep Trevor Harris upright, big ifs, coming off a career-threatening injury, where do you see the Riders' record?
Realistically, 9-9, on a good day, 10-8. I can't. To me, I'm not yet ready to anoint them as being contending for first place with like a 13-5 or a 12-6 record. I think we are a year away from that, at least. I think we've just gone through 2 years of really some subpar performance. I think when you look at this year, to me, it's a 9-9 campaign. This year, and I'm not just saying it because we have a new coach named Corey, but to me, this year reminds me a lot of 2012 when it was Corey Chamberlain's first year. When he came in, we had 2011, which was a bad campaign for the Riders. 2012 brought the enthusiasm. We lost the West semifinal to Calgary when Randy Bryant scored on the stop and go in the last 30 seconds, and after Durant had pulled them ahead with the pass to Carr. But I look upon this year as laying a foundation for really good opportunities in 2025. So that's why I'm thinking, I'm looking at a 9-9 record. Let's not ignore the fact that, again, I pointed Hardwick being a key free agent acquisition. Let's not forget the fact that Harris, Blake, and Hardwick are combined 107 years old. So you've got your quarterback and you've got 40% of the offensive line that is old, ancient from football standards. And I think that's where I see some risk. And yes, I know I spoke earlier about I love Shea Patterson, I love Jack Cohn. But to me, there's a drop-off from QB1 to QB2. And if we get like what we had last year, but for whatever reason Harris gets injured, something happens where he's not performing well, I think that's where we're going to be hard making it to 9-9. But if Harris can stay healthy, with I think better leadership in the locker room, with better leadership on the field, with the coaching staff, with a rejuvenated team, again, let's look at 9-9 as being a successful 2024 campaign.
Yeah, I've got BC 1. I've got Winnipeg 2, although Winnipeg's in a lot of trouble if judging by what I saw in the preseason. If Zach Collaros goes down, and we've been saying it, I know, but pretty soon Father Time taps you on the shoulder. She's all over. So if he gets hurt, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are in trouble because Strevler is a great athlete. He can throw serviceably, but not enough to be a number one, in my opinion.
But Ballsy, what the Bombers will end up doing is basically go over the salary cap, get a slap on their list, and win a playoff game, and all will be well.
But everybody should do that. It's not a salary cap. It's a speeding ticket. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. And they should. The Riders, they didn't go hard enough. In 2022, they did not go hard enough to host the Grey Cup. Who cares? The two teams that were over the cap, Winnipeg at 70,000 and Toronto at 40,000, played in the damn game in our backyard. Who cares? Who cares?
I agree. And let's face it, like $30,000 is basically like 1 hour of jersey sales at Mosaic before a football game.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. But back to that. Everybody busted Brendan Taman's balls staying with the theme of the show. They busted Brendan Taman's balls for backloading contracts and spending all the money. And look what happened after we won the 2013 Grey Cup. Nobody was bitching when the confetti was falling and we were winning a Grey Cup. 2014, we had a very good chance to win it again when Darian went out in a phantom play. And then 2015 was a write-off because his Achilles blows in the first half against the Blue Bombers. And then Corey Chamberlain and Brendan Taman are fired. They're gone. They're gone. So it's kind of revisionist history. It's interesting to see. Okay, so yeah, I've got BC 1, Winnipeg 2, Saskatchewan and Edmonton will be battling for 3. That's a coin flip, and I think it comes down to who plays better at quarterback at the end of the day, Harris or McLeod Bethel-Thompson, and then I got Calgary bringing up the rear again, which if that happens would call into question whether Craig's brother Dave is back, because I don't know that they're going to. That's an organization that likes to win. Then out east, because of the Chad Kelly deal, I've got Chad Kelly and the Argos probably finishing 3rd. I think Dukes might be good enough to keep them in the mix. I got Ottawa still 4th. I don't know what to make of Drew Brown, so I can't put him higher than that. Hopefully I'm wrong, because those Ottawa fans deserve it. Deserve some success for sure. At 2, I've got Hamilton. Bowl looked good in the preseason, but and Powell's, I don't know. I still want to see more of him. You got to give it to Montreal. They're 1. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's been so long. When you mentioned about Calgary potentially finishing 5th, it's probably been 20 years since the Stamps have had, I guess, that drop off that most teams go through. It seems like every 5 or 6 years. So the Stamps have been, they're the New England Patriots of the CFL. They've been able to be successful, have that succession plan from quarterbacks.
Let's not forget, Keith. Let's not forget, my friend. Last year, they were 6-12 and made the playoffs. It's only because the Riders shit the bed that the Calgary Stampeders made the playoffs. So it wasn't a great season by Calgary standards.
Yeah, so we'll see. Again, I have not seen them finish in the basement again in 2 decades. So let's see if that transpires this year. But again, I view there's some optimism, some genuine, authentic optimism if you're a Rider fan this year. Just again because of the emergence of some leadership and these key free agent acquisitions we've seen.
2 more things for you. I wanted to leave John Lynch till the end because that's where we saw each other at his remembrance or his celebration of life. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on the new jersey, the alternate jersey for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Mark Habick, who is the dictator of merchandise over there with the Riders, went to high school with him. He does a great job. I'm just going to be honest. To me, it's a U of S Huskies knockoff. I thought it was a U of S Huskies jersey. We're the U of S Riders for 2 games this year. That's how I feel. Your thoughts, though? You like it?
Well, yeah, I'll pull up the professor card here. I give it a solid B+.
Okay.
When I look at the logo and the uniform, the color, the obsidian green, I believe it's called. Yep. It's not as bad as watermelon, which will go down as one of the worst ever. It's not as bad as the 2010 red-black jersey, which was, again, I know we beat Edmonton the 1 game we played in that jersey, but that was a hideous jersey. I do like seeing a darker shade of green because I remember back like 20 years ago when we had the black jerseys. I loved those. I was thinking this looked a lot like Michigan State, like a Michigan State Spartan uniform. The S might take a little getting used to. It's been 4 years that we've had the S that we're currently using. I'm most excited. I will get one of the jerseys. I'm wearing an 18 Fairholm right now, but I'm more excited about the color than I am about the logo. Like, put it that way.
Okay, that's good. And I want to, I don't have a say in it, obviously. I would have rather have seen a black jersey, a return to some sort of black jersey. Or I wanted them, remember about 10 years ago, they went with the retro white jerseys. So they had the old 80s with the back with the upside down S. I'd rather see them go retro all season. I like the retro home and away. That's what I would have loved to have seen. They're not horrible. I think U of S knockoff. That's what I think. But anyway, lastly, you're at the U of S. This guy went to the U of S. Legendary broadcaster, John Lynch, passing away. Friend of both of ours. We were both at his celebration of life ceremony. Just your thoughts on John Lynch.
A lot of time for that gentleman. To me, a great man who lived a great life and left an indelible impression upon Rider Nation, upon the Canadian Football League. I often think there's several great things that happened in 1963. Ron Lancaster came to the Riders, George Reed came to the Riders, and John Lynch graduated university. So John Lynch, class of 1963, University of Saskatchewan, with his Bachelor of Commerce degree. To me, when I think of growing up in small town Saskatchewan like I did, I grew up in the days of listening to games on a transistor radio. Hardly anything was televised back then. Maybe rarely you'd get a road game. But I listened to John Lynch, and he was the voice that brought me enthusiasm. He is Wikipedia before Wikipedia existed. He knew player details, statistic, background, and bio. He's somebody who bled green because he loved the Riders, and he didn't shy away from being a fan, as well as somebody who could make you emotionally connected to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. Hey, Keith, I hope we can have you on pretty regularly on the show. I love your insight, your passion, and your love for the 3 down game. Thanks for your time, man.
Thanks. Ballsy, go Riders.